Get out and stop pretending you understand any of this, Janitor. Professor Laurel Kensington pointed directly at the door, her finger slicing through the air like a weapon. The 37-year-old woman, the mathematics star of Hudson Heights University, had just humiliated Holden Carraway in front of 30 graduate students, greeting him like a stain beneath her designer heels. Holden's hands froze on the cleaning cart. 30 pairs of eyes burned into his back as the students giggled, delighted by this unexpected bit of entertainment. Laurel stood beside the chalkboard covered in complex equations, her framed PhDs glittering on the wall behind her like trophies of intellectual superiority. But instead of leaving, Holden stepped closer to the mathematical proof she was presenting. His deep blue eyes swept across the elegant symbols with an intensity that made Laurel's confident smile flicker for a split second. "Professor," Holden said softly, his voice slicing through the silence, "there's an error in your third line." The room erupted with stunned whispers. The air shifted, and Laurel Kensington, who had always believed she could not be wrong, suddenly stood frozen like a statue. What happens when the person you look down on the most sees something you completely missed? If you enjoy dramatic reversals like this one, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. And ask yourself, how will Laurel react when a janitor points out a mistake in her lecture? Right in the middle of class? Let's find out what happens next. The humiliation echoed through the marble halls of Hudson Heights University like a silent declaration of war. Within hours, the rumor spread like dry fire. The janitor had dared to challenge Professor Laurel Kensington, the rising star of the mathematics department, the pride of the entire university. In Laurel's corner office, where wide glass windows overlooked lawns manicured like a royal garden, students dressed in designer casuals chatted about philosophy and game theory over 12 lattes. The four walls around her displayed degrees from Harvard, MIT, Cambridge, like a shrine honoring intellectual supremacy. Prestigious journal publications lined her shelves. At faculty dinner parties, she raised glasses of wine that cost a month's salary for some people, engaging in academic debates with decorated Nobel laureates. Laurel was the embodiment of the academic elite, and she behaved as if she were entitled to it. On the other side of that world, Holden Carraway began his shift just as the sun dipped below the horizon. His old cleaning cart rolled through silent after-hours hallways, restrooms, classrooms, and laboratories. 3 buildings, 8 hours of work, emptying trash, mopping floors, restocking toilet paper, sanitizing desks and chairs. But during the rare minutes he could rest, Holden opened advanced mathematics books he had carefully hidden among maintenance manuals. His locker held 2 contradictory worlds, cleaning chemicals and notebooks, filled edge to edge with complicated mathematical proofs. The humiliation had echoed through the marble halls of Hudson Heights University like a silent declaration of war, and within hours the rumors spread like dry fire. A janitor had dared to challenge Professor Laurel Kensington, the rising star of the mathematics department, the pride of the entire university. In Laurel's corner office, where wide glass windows overlooked lawns manicured like a royal garden, students dressed in designer casuals chatted about philosophy and game theory over $12 lattes. The 4 walls around her displayed degrees from Harvard, MIT, and Cambridge like a shrine to intellectual supremacy, her shelves lined with prestigious journal publications. At faculty dinner parties, she raised glasses of wine that cost a month's salary for some, engaging in debates with Nobel laureates. Laurel was the embodiment of the academic elite, and she behaved as if she were entitled to it. On the other side of that world, Holden Carraway began his shift just as the sun dipped below the horizon, his old cleaning cart rolling through silent after-hours hallways, restrooms, classrooms, and laboratories. 3 buildings, 8 hours of work, emptying trash, mopping floors, restocking toilet paper, sanitizing desks and chairs. But during the rare minutes he could rest, Holden opened advanced mathematics books he had carefully hidden among maintenance manuals. His locker held 2 contradictory worlds, cleaning chemicals and notebooks, filled edge to edge with complicated mathematical proofs, the pages worn soft from constant study. under the dim fluorescent lights of the janitorial closet. The confrontation had been electric and brutal. Professor Laurel Kensington had pointed directly at the door, her finger slicing through the air like a weapon, and told him to get out and stop pretending he understood any of it. 30 graduate students had watched, their giggles a quiet soundtrack to his humiliation as he stood frozen, his hands gripping the cleaning cart. She stood beside the chalkboard covered in complex equations, her framed PhDs glittering on the wall behind her like trophies. But instead of leaving, Holden had stepped closer. His deep blue eyes swept across the elegant symbols with an intensity that made Laurel's confident smile flicker for a split. A second before he spoke softly, his voice slicing through the silence to point out an error in her third line. The room had erupted into stunned whispers, the air shifting palpably as Laurel Kensington, who had always believed she could not be wrong, suddenly stood frozen like a statue. What happens when the person you look down on the most sees something you completely missed? For Laurel, the question was a live wire in her mind, twisting and sparking through the veneer of her composure. She had spent the hours since the incident replaying the moment, the exact notation on the board, the flaw in the logical transition. He had identified a subtle but catastrophic oversight in a proof she was due to publish. The janitor was correct. This acknowledgement was a poison in her system, more bitter for its source. Holden, meanwhile, moved through his nocturnal routine with a quiet focus. The rhythms of mopping and wiping a kind of meditation. The mathematics in his head was a separate luminous world, a sanctuary of pure logic where his circumstances faded away. He hadn't intended to speak. The correction had escaped him almost involuntarily, an instinct honed by thousands of hours of solitary study. He knew the consequences of challenging a goddess in her temple, but in that moment, the truth of the equation had felt more important than the hierarchy of the room. Back in her office, Laurel stared at the offending proof, now corrected on her tablet. Her reputation was built on impeccable rigor. This error, left uncorrected, would have been a career-ending scandal discovered by peer review. The janitor had, technically, saved her from professional ruin, a fact that grated against every fiber of her pride. Her reaction was not gratitude, but a simmering defensive fury. How could he know? Who was he? The following evening, as Holden cleaned the empty mathematics building, he found a single sheet of paper placed deliberately on the central lectern in Laurel's lecture hall. It was a new problem, fiendishly complex, a gauntlet thrown in neat, precise handwriting. No note, no signature, but the message was clear. He looked around the silent room, then carefully folded the paper and put it in his pocket. That night after his shift, under the bare bulb in the maintenance room, he worked on it. The solution came to him just before dawn, a beautiful, elegant chain of reasoning. He wrote it out cleanly on a fresh page and left it in the same spot. The next night, another problem awaited, even more advanced. This became their silent, nightly duel, a battle fought in integrals and abstractions. In the empty heart of the university, Laurel would arrive each morning to find her challenge met, the solutions not just correct, but often demonstrating a startling, inventive clarity. Her curiosity began to corrode her anger. She started arriving earlier, hiding in the soundproof control booth to watch. She saw him enter, not in his janitor's uniform, but in a simple sweater. Saw the way he would pause his cleaning, his eyes lighting up as he read the problem, the intense focus as he scribbled in his notebook between tasks. One night, she did not leave a problem. Instead, she waited until he had finished cleaning the hall and stepped out of the shadows. Holden started, clutching his cart. "Professor Kensington." "Who are you?" she asked, the question stripped of its usual condescension, raw with genuine need to understand. "Holden Carraway, the janitor." "You know that's not what I mean." She gestured to the lectern. "This knowledge, where did it come from? You have no formal training. Your file lists a high school diploma." Holden met her gaze, his blue eyes calm. "The library is open to everyone, Professor. And the night is long. I read. I work through problems. It passes the time. You solved the Perelman conjecture variation I left last night in under 6 hours. It took my postdoc a week." She took a step closer, her designer heels silent on the freshly mopped floor. "Why are you here? Doing this?" He looked around at the empty seats, the grand hall. "It's a job. It pays the rent. The mathematics. That's for me. I didn't mean to interrupt your class. It was instinctual." Laurel studied him, the calloused hands, the quiet dignity, the fierce intelligence in his eyes. The walls she had built between her world and his began to feel absurd, constructed of nothing but prejudice and tradition. Her own journey had been paved with privilege and open doors. His was a path carved through rock in the dark. The realization was a profound humiliation, deeper than any public correction. "The error you caught," she said finally, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "It was critical. You saved me from a significant professional embarrassment." Holden simply nodded. The proof was beautiful otherwise. Just that one misstep. A faint, reluctant smile touched Laurel's lips. "You have a gift. Mr. Carraway, one, this institution is foolish to waste pushing a mop." She took a deep breath, the decision forming as she spoke it. "I am offering you a position, not as a janitor, as a special research assistant in my department. There will be a stipend, access to all resources, and my personal mentorship. You will have to formally audit some courses to fill in gaps. But your practical understanding—" She trailed off, shaking her head in lingering disbelief. Holden was silent for a long time, the hum of the building's HVAC the only sound. He looked at his cart, then at the chalkboard at the front of the room, still faintly dusted with the ghosts of yesterday's equations. "I appreciate the offer, Professor, but I have conditions." Laurel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Conditions? 1, I finish my contract with facilities. They depend on me. 2, we keep this between us until I'm ready. And 3, you never speak to anyone, student, janitor, or anyone else, the way you spoke to me that day. Intelligence isn't owned by a degree. It's everywhere. You just have to be willing to see it." Laurel Kensington, the star who had never been lectured to, felt the sting of the reproof, but also its truth. She had been challenged not just in her mathematics, but in her fundamental worldview. "Agreed," she said, extending her hand. He shook it, his grip firm and sure. The war was over, not with a surrender, but with a hard-won treaty. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic in the mathematics building shifted in subtle ways. The janitor, Holden, still cleaned the halls, but Professor Kensington now acknowledged him with a respectful nod. Students noticed she had become less dismissive of unconventional questions, and late at night, 2 minds, one polished by prestige, the other forged in silence, began to collaborate on problems that would soon astonish the academic world, proving that the most profound discoveries often come from the most unexpected places, when we finally have the courage to look beyond the surface. If you enjoyed this dramatic reversal of fortunes, this story of hidden genius and humility, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to my channel, Kindness True Stories, for more powerful narratives that remind us that potential and wisdom can be found anywhere, often where we least expect it.